Once again, you have reached the real dirt. And on today's dirt, it's a very special episode. Today, I've got Nick Morin from CannaCribs. Now, if you haven't seen CannaCribs, you got to check it out. Great YouTube channel. It's absolutely one of my favorites. It's one of the best production in our whole industry. And if you haven't seen CannaCribs yet, you're missing out. Thank you so much, Nick, for joining me.
Chip, thanks for having me. I really appreciate your time.
Nick called me up a month or two ago and said he was going to start a podcast. And we've exchanged a bunch of information and talked back and forth. And, I'm really excited to hear about your podcast. You've just launched a new podcast. And, we just immediately got along on the phone because, we do the same thing, in some manner, is we get to go talk to ganja people all over the country and world and find out, what they're all about and get to go into gardens that we made people just dream about. What's it like having this dream job, Nick?
I just would say I'm extremely grateful to be working with my team, my best friends, and going out and filming these stories, telling these stories now on the podcast. It's a dream job, and it's something that, as a little kid, I never would have imagined I'd be here today, but it's pretty special at this point in time in this industry as we're evolving rapidly.
I know we got a lot to talk about, but let's talk about CannaCribs. How did it start? When did it start? Tell me about it.
I'll take you to the exact point in time. CannaCon, Seattle. I was talking with my friends that own Glass House Farms in Carpinteria, California. It's dinner. It's after the trade show, as many people do after a trade show. You go out for dinner and drinks, and you're just brainstorming. And when you get those energies, across the table going and some good ideas, CannaCribs was born. I wanted to create a YouTube series, and I was really inspired by Marijuana Mania by Burner and Strain Hunters and their team. And I wanted to come up with kind of my own version of garden tours. I think Growing Exposed was coming up around the same time as well. So, I was chatting with, Graham and their whole team over there, and we came up that they were, it sounds like you got the intro going. So yeah, that's it right there, man. So we flew out there shortly after. They actually flew to Tucson and picked us up, which was a surreal experience in itself right there. I put together my team from the University of Arizona, some friends from college, some friends that I've worked with, and then some acquaintances kind of 1 degree away in Tucson. And we flew out there, filmed our pilot, and as they say, the rest is history.
I've actually got it on right now. Glass House Greenhouse, commercial cannabis growing operation in California, CannaCribs. I really love this episode. I love everything about it. It's so highly produced. I'm a TV junkie. I love format, and just the way you guys have produced this whole series, it mimics, several other of my favorite type of genres. The fix and flip style genre, where it's an old junk car they find the barn find and turn it into
right.
something great, or a house where they buy it and they fix it and flip it. And you've got a lot of the elements in the editing with that. It really draws people in. Man, I also love all of the product placement that occurs in this episode and other episodes. It shows the products that people are using, but it's not an over-the-top infomercial advertisement. Because we all know it's advertising, helps pay for it all. It's very discreetly done. It's done well.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The product placement and the advertising, it allows for us to go out there and film. And, a lot of people don't know this, but it's not like we're charging farms, tens of thousands or, $100,000 to go out to film. It's actually no cost the vast majority of the time. So the farm doesn't pay anything. And, we, of course, have to pay our crew and get out there. And, this very well, Chip. YouTube gives us $0 in advertising. I can't even spend money on YouTube to promote our show. So it creates an environment where you have to be very scrappy. You have to be wise and extend your dollars through organic content. And the thought leadership behind the brands, the products, the services that these growers are using, it's a pretty straightforward model where these are the products that their success is built on. Those companies, like let's say soil companies, your background and growing media, in every episode, there's a different growing media. And these growers rely on that product for their success. So it's a really natural fit where we get to educate fans all around the world. We get to help promote the grower through the episode. And then the vendor has an opportunity to promote their products naturally, because we don't place products that aren't naturally used at the farm.
And you can tell the authenticity of it due to that. What was your background in cannabis previous to this?
So I just say a lover of the plant. I'm relatively... And
you were enthusiast. You were a cannabis enthusiast. Excellent.
That's exactly right. So I started consuming young, and I have two older brothers, and that probably helped a little bit. Yeah, I actually started Growers Network and CannaCribs shortly after, during my senior year in college. So this is my first foray into any professional industry, really. I started a couple communities while I was at the University of Arizona. So I guess I do have a background in kind of grassroots community building from the ground up. And then, I have a passion for both cannabis and also technology, and the marriage of the two of those things, as well as marketing and community building, is kind of where I live today. And what I'm super passionate about, when it comes to sharing very special stories that will impact the history and our future, everyone in this industry, with the rest of the world, and just kind of showing and proving that there is a way to have, legal, compliant, and really good cannabis at the end of the day that saves lives and builds businesses.
You came to this as just an enthusiast. You had a surface knowledge of how cannabis operated, how it grew, the production of it all. Did you have some misconceptions that were immediately proven inaccurate when you started doing CannaCribs?
I would say everyone on our crew, including myself, we didn't really know what went into a commercial size grow operation. We might have had friends growing here and there more, underground and maybe at the hobbyist or kind of that caregiver scale. But to walk into a commercial grow operation and see it at scale, it was incredible. So I'd say maybe less misconceptions, but more just, kind of what's behind the curtain. Mm-hmm. Having the opportunity to share that with the world is really special.
You talk about the stories. You mentioned that a couple of times. Do you have a favorite cannabis story or a favorite episode that you made?
Oh my gosh, that's a tough one. Choosing between your babies. So
I just keep pressing them. I just started, man. I just started.
Yeah, no, I love the question, Chip. So I'd say, one of the stories that I probably enjoyed the most telling and also was the most moved by was Scott Reach at Rare Dankness. He's gone through a lot of personal turmoil, and you can listen to his story with his health and how cannabis really healed him and gave him an opportunity to, run a business and support his family. So a lot of that comes up throughout the episode. And, it's not every single episode that story is going to be exactly the same. Each episode kind of has a unique story to tell. But with Scott and Rare Dankness, before we went out there, we did some research. We always like to do some pre-production research to come up with some story points and kind of build out what the episode's going to look like before we set foot on set to film. With his personal fight with cancer and how cannabis really helped him personally with his fight with cancer, but also his background with breeding and as a geneticist and through his other companies, he's building, in my words, a cannabis empire. It doesn't stop with just House of Dankness. It doesn't stop with just Rare Dankness. He has a seed company around the world. He has a new nutrient line. So one thing that I really resonate with and connect with is the entrepreneurial spirit of these cannabis grow operation owners. I know there's a lot of different types of commercial grow operations, but that episode with Scott, it really shined through all the different things he had going on, and I loved it.
He's really built an incredible room. If anybody's out there who wants to see a great cultivation grow room, look up that episode. Which episode is it? I'm looking for it now.
Episode 6. It was right after Honeydew
Episode
Farms.
6. Yeah, totally. Episode 6, Honeydew Farm. Yeah. The first CannaCribs I saw was the Honeydew Farms one.
Oh,
Because
really? Okay.
I've spent most of my life in Humboldt. I moved there in '97 and still have a property and farm and business there today. I'd heard that there was some, because it's a small community. So I'd heard that
Yeah.
there was some like thing being filmed at Honeydew Farms and it was out. So yeah, I went and checked it out. That was my first exposure to you, and then of course I watched all the rest of the episodes.
Yeah, it's bingeable content. It takes you about a weekend to watch all the CannaCribs and Deep Roots, and we have a couple new projects on the horizon. But if you ask me the favorite episode to film as far as where I was, it's hands down Alex Moore's
episode.
Honeydew Farms in Humboldt. It was my first time traveling there. And I mean, honestly, Chip, I felt like the time froze. Our cell phones weren't working. We just had our cameras and we were kind of like paused in this beautiful forest, and his property is pretty amazing as well. On a river basin, it was magical. And we stayed in Arcata. Yeah. So we stayed in Arcata I apologize. We stayed in Eureka. We drove up about an hour and a half up the hill and then an hour and a half back down to our hotel each day. So we had to wake up super early and we went to bed pretty late each night because we were battling sunlight. Most of his farm's outdoors. So we had to film very efficiently with the daylight there. So part of that was probably some lack of sleep that added to the effect, but it was amazing. We went out to the water side as well at the end of the episode. We went to the redwoods. Everywhere we go, Chip, we try to characterize the region. We try to give the audience a glimpse into what it's really like, not just in the farm, but the surrounding area, because we have over 150 countries around the world watching our YouTube channel, right? So if someone's in, let's say, Russia and they've never been to Humboldt, I kind of put it on our shoulders, like as our responsibility to tell them what it's really like and to show them that glimpse of the world. And Humboldt is such a beautiful place. And I'm actually going to be, right after this interview, I'm actually interviewing two brothers that co-founded Lit House Farms in Humboldt, Big Al and Chris. And then last week, I interviewed Nat at Humboldt Seed Company for the CannaCribs podcast. So I love Humboldt.
I know Nat. I'm actually like growing his seeds right now.
Nice.
OGs. Yeah, okay. Totally. Yeah, we got like 10,000 auto OGs we've planted in the past like 2 weeks. Wow. They'll come out sometime in October.
Well, I'm always finding a reason, trying to find a reason to go back. So if you still have property, if you have friends up in Humboldt, I'd love to film them someday.
Oh man, I love it up there. We've got so much stuff going on up there. It's an incredible geographical environment. It's a really rough political environment. There's just a lot of people that do not support legal cannabis and try to stand in your way at every point. It's really unfortunate because there's so many small farmers over there that can really bring and grow the best cannabis in the world. And they've got like the experience and the time and the understanding and the desire and the heart to do it. But, at so many levels, the county and the bureaucracy in the county is against what they're doing. Now, many people in the county, they totally accept it, right? Many of the board of supervisors are totally accept it, but it's just a fight, for anybody trying to get a legal cannabis operation there. And I salute anybody who's gone through the work to get one, because it's not at all easy there. It's not at all easy there. So, let's hope that the industry survives. But, I've got tons of connections up there. I'd totally hook you up with anybody you can't figure out to talk to. I started a potting soil company up there years ago, Royal Gold Soils. I've sold soil to everybody up there for years. And currently my new soil company, Growers Soil, I'm not in California yet. I'm mostly just focusing on, the Midwest and the East Coast. I got tons of connections all over, man. If you ever want to go see anybody, just ask. I might know them.
Thank you. And that's what I love about this industry. When when I first started out, I was working with my best friend and roommate at the time and current business partner, Nate Lipton of Growers House. And he had a spreadsheet of growers, right, that are commercial growers that buy from Growers House. And I was originally, and I still run Growers Network today, although we're, a lot of the conversations around CannaCribs up to this point. But the first company, and it is the production company of CannaCribs, is called Growers Network, and it's an online forum. We have about 11,000 members around the world, just people where they can go and connect and learn from each other. And I was originally just handed a spreadsheet of the top contacts from Growers House. And I just interviewed for 10 months. I picked up the phone in the lean canvas methodology in the startup world. It's called customer segment testing. So sure. I just picked up the phone and called, 100 growers and listened to their pain points and, how they learned how to grow cannabis, where they were at in their career, super seasoned or new, what hurdles they were jumping over to become a legal professional grow operation. And at no point did I say, oh, join Growers Network, or, oh, like CannaCribs didn't start at that point. So in the very beginning, my first 10 months in this industry was just network building and acceptance amongst growers that were complete strangers. And what you just shared with me right now has been my experience up to this point, just generosity and open arms and welcoming into the industry. So thank you and thank everyone out there that helps to nurture this industry.
It's interesting you say that, because there's really two sides to the cannabis coin. And it depends on which coin you're talking about, but the knowledge coin that we're talking about, there's two sides of it. There are the guarded people that won't let you in and are closed off. They don't really want to talk about it so much. A lot of it's left over from prohibitionary, thinking. Some of it is, the proprietary knowledge. They think what they have is like the best. There's often ego associated with all of that. But that's one portion of the community. And then the whole other portion of the community, like 75% open, talks about it, invites you over, wants to know what you're doing because they want to know if they're doing it right or wrong, right? Are absolutely like enthusiastic about what they're growing and want to make it better. So it's real interesting. It's not an even coin flip that most people in the cannabis industry that I come across, and I'm both of us are kind of a unique point in the pyramid, but they openly want to tell us what we're doing and tell other people and talk to other people openly. Yeah. It's just a great place to learn. That's for sure.
Yeah. And right now, I like that you said it's a great place to learn. Right now, trade shows up to this point were kind of like the in-person exchange of information and knowledge and contacts and products and services. And now that they're all shut down, what I've seen is a huge influx of traffic to our YouTube channel and to our, Growers Network grower forum, because people can't meet in person anymore. So, obviously no one planned for this, but for the content creators out there, such as yourself and my team, we're really in a pivotal point right now where, and that's why I started this podcast, is we need to kind of ramp up. We need to, create more content and share more stories, because there's not a whole lot of in-person outlets right now. We're kind of leading that charge, and I kind of take it upon us to provide and kind of have that responsibility to provide that knowledge and information exchange.
Cannabis, the way you learn about it and the way people learn about it now is through this open source, is through YouTube, it's through Google, it's through this open network of people like bragging or people just completely enthusiastic about cannabis. It's so much different than, say, let's pick a trade like photography or marketing. Right. With marketing, if you're interested in marketing, you can go online and you can buy 24 Frank Kern courses. You can buy any type of how-to YouTube advertisement or how-to Facebook or how-to content. But the cannabis industry isn't like that. Can you shed some light on why you think that is?
Well, I think you said a little bit earlier, Chip, a lot of people and I've heard it on your show as well. There's a lot of growers out there that in their mindset and in their belief, they're growing the best way, right? There are so many processes that go into growing cannabis. I'm not a grower myself, but in filming these large scale grow operations and in telling these stories, I've learned a whole lot about, growing cannabis organically, growing cannabis, kind of boutique indoor, growing cannabis outdoors, 36,000 plants at Los Sueños farm. So what I have found is it's extremely fragmented on how to grow cannabis. There are so many unique ways. And the beautiful part to me is there's not one right way. Like you can grow soil, you can grow soilless, you can grow, indoor with LEDs or indoor with HPS. And there's all these right path, left path that you can take throughout the entire grow cycle. And I want to educate the world on all those different options. And in each scene in CannaCribs, if someone's listening to this and have not seen a CannaCribs episode, we always start with genetics. We go through propagation and we follow the life cycle of the plant all the way through kind of seed to sale, if you will. So throughout each scene, I have not filmed an episode that has completely replicated a previous episode. Everyone's doing propagation a little bit differently. They're doing veg a little bit differently. So to your question, I think it's fragmented. Email marketing is email marketing, right? There's some tricks to the trade, but it's an email at the end of the day. But, growing a plant, there are so many different unique ways to do that. And furthermore, there's always new ideas, right? There's always someone with an innovative idea. And when they share, it's the rising tide for every grower in the world. And then kind of, fuel to the fire here, new products, right? I mean, you are a product inventor, you are a product genius and innovator. And when you, Chip, bring a new product to the market, it opens up a Pandora box of all these new types of cultivation methodologies. So I think it's fragmented because there are so many different ways to grow the plant.
Man, you really hit the nail on the head there. There is absolutely no one way. And that's just the beauty of ganja, of cannabis, high THC or hemp, right? It can grow in a million different spots.
That's the resiliency to the plant itself, right? I mean, it's here for a reason. I love your saying, plants grow us. We don't grow plants. And I got to pinch myself right now because it's so surreal to actually be on your show talking to you about that. But I completely agree. This plant's here for a reason. It's extremely resilient. And the fact that it can be grown in all these different, unique ways to the region, to the grower, to the product, it's here for a reason.
You started Growers Network 2017, 2018, something like that?
Yeah, so the end of 2016 going into 2017,
right.
Senior at University of Arizona, I did about 10 months of research, just trying to figure out what business model to start. I had my hypotheses that I wanted to do something in the community space, given my background, and I thought there was a model there to build a new breed of online growing forums, which is Growers Network today. A little bit more of, I pay all my respects, of course, to the forums that got us here today, like the Grass City and Overgrow and all those amazing forums. But I wanted to do it a little bit differently and provide a safe place for the professional growers that were trying to transcend out of, let's say, a house grow into a 300,000 square foot greenhouse. Like, how do you do that? Who do you talk to? Where do you go to learn? Those are kind of the questions that I was trying to ask these growers. And that was what Growers Network was born out of, was that research.
Man, it has changed since 2016. I mean, we're 2020 right now as we record this episode. It's August 2020. You're in Arizona. I'm in Oklahoma. We have seen cannabis become legal all over the country in the past 4 years. We have seen trends in cannabis happen. We've seen governments legalize it. We've seen Ponzi schemes associated with it. When you started this, at some point you started to get like a vision of what was happening. your perceptions of it in 2016, how have they changed perceptions of it today, knowing all that change has happened?
Let's just start with vendors, for example, equipment suppliers, manufacturers. So in the beginning days, let's say 2016, I went to my first trade show as a maximum yield show with Nate and his father, my mentor, Paulie. And they're, with Grower's House, we went there to talk to vendors and walk the shows in San Francisco. And it was all new to me, this professional side of the industry that I just didn't know existed. As a connoisseur or consumer or advocate, in high school and college, I just didn't know that this whole professional industry existed. I was kind of naive to that. So since then, I have seen a lot of new products hit the market. I've seen consolidation of different companies, like take Fluence, for example, with Osram coming in, and take Hawthorne, for example, and Scott's Group coming in and acquiring Gavita. And I listened to that episode on your show. I loved that one, by the way. And I've seen that consolidation happen in a short amount of time, past 5 years on the equipment side alone. On the grower side, I'm always trying to pick the next market to go out and film. And I definitely will be chatting with you about Oklahoma. Once it's a little bit safer to start flying, I definitely want to bring the CannaCribs crew over to Oklahoma and film some farms out there. But what I've seen is, a lot of expansion. It expands into a new region, new state, and then it kind of restricts down. It's a period of time where it grows, hits that apex, and then consolidation starts to happen, and kind of that market equilibrium starts to happen, right? The supply and demand starts to balance out. So I've seen that happen over the past 5 years, which is pretty incredible. I've seen, Canada come online and some other parts around the world, Colombia for one, that's really, kind of blowing up in their part of the world. So it's exciting. And at the same time, I'm honored to be able to help document that history.
Who could have predicted cannabis? Canada would have just skyrocketed and plummeted so quickly.
Right.
Who could have predicted that Oklahoma, once one of the most conservative places about cannabis in the country, would become the best and most premier place, to cultivate cannabis in the country. Nobody thought that was going to happen.
Right. So
it's incredible where it's turning.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Chip. So what can we learn as a country? What can we learn from Canada's missteps so we don't follow in the same footsteps?
Well, I think we're already doing the exact same thing. We just weren't able to have publicly traded companies that could directly trade cannabis on the NASDAQ, right? And any like ancillary type businesses that were allowed to be publicly traded, those were all, over the counter OTC trading stocks. So I think that is really what kept the U.S. investment schema from exploding. But essentially, you still have the same exact elements that were going on in Canada that are going on here today, which are just like some incredibly savvy people that know how to manipulate the markets, that know how to manipulate venture capital groups or family offices. And, for instance, the typical cannabis in quote unquote investment, there's two types. There's one is just like me, you, and my brother all get together and we decide we want a cannabis operation. So we throw in our money and we make it.
Kind of the friends.
The other friends and family thing, the bootstrap. And man, sometimes like you come up with millions of dollars that way to start your operation. People call you corporate cannabis, but it's not. It's just, you, me, and your brother putting it together. And then there's the venture capital model or the investor model, we'll call it. And it stems on, somebody like you who wants to put in a cannabis operation, or somebody like me that wants to put in a cannabis operation. And we develop a business plan, we develop a forma that's, fictional, that we decide, we think it should be this way, that we're going to make this much money over this period of time. We development and operational costs and schedule, points at time when we make profit and investors can get paid back. And people can paint incredibly accurate pictures like that, but then they also create these, inaccurate portrayal of what's happened. And that's what went on in Canada, right? There was an inaccurate portrayal of how big the market was.
Right.
And so many people went into the marketplace and estimated it to be like 10 times bigger than it actually was, and just drove that whole investment strategy, right? So like that happens here in the US, but it usually happens in two different ways. It happens from the person that's actually trying to like get financed or get investors, and they over exaggerate both, knowingly and not over promise. They don't either know they can do it, or they're being promised by other people who don't fulfill their promises, or however that pans out. And so then it collapses. Right. And then the other way it collapses is when a venture capital group comes in, and they, the way the venture capital groups work, or many of them work, is they're funds, and there's someone who like is running the fund, and they're getting paid a percent of the fund that's spent annually. And they're constantly going out, like searching for more capital. And they'll do stuff like this. They'll like go to you, Nick. They're like, "Hey, Nick, are you interested in cannabis?" Just say yes. Just, say yes.
Yes.
You're okay. Yes, you're interested in cannabis, and you've got $10 million that you want to invest in cannabis this year. Just say yes.
Yes.
Well, I'm not going to get you to sign on any line right now, but we've got all these cannabis operations that come to us. We built $100 million fund, and if you want to contribute it, then you can contribute to it. Just deal by deal basis. You interested in that, Nick?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds great. Okay. So now they go to the next guy and they say the same thing. And they're like, "Oh, hey man, we've already got $10 million, right? Don't be left behind." And they hustle all of these people for the investment, which I shouldn't say hustle, because everybody's a willing participant, because you love cannabis, you've got a lot of money, and you want to invest in it. Right? Like nothing wrong with that at all. But the person managing the fund is where it comes into play. Is now they're pressured to spend your money, because that's how they get paid, right? They only get paid from your investment is if they find an investment for you, and you'll go through 10 before you say yes on one.
They're pressured, and then they invest your money, and that kind of it hurts the companies that might be overfunded, because then that ties to unrealistic expectations that they have to deliver upon, and that could lead to the demise of their company and also the fund. Yeah. But at the end of the day, the managing partner of said fund has already, received.
They've already been paid. They've already been paid. And,
seems like a flawed model.
It's a totally flawed model, but the reality is that you're so rich, Nick, that you've got this $10 million that you need to like invest annually. So like it's, because CannaCribs is a multi-billion-dollar operation now, and you have to lose this $10 million every year. Right. And it's an oversimplification of how it's going down. But like you spend the money and then you move on to the next project. Right. And your VC manager moves on to the next project because they got another bunch of people like yourself that got $10 million that they want to invest or have an annual amount every year that they need to invest. So they keep up their lead gen. And man, that just pumps a bunch of crap out there. Projects that should be $1 million turn out to be $12 million. Greenhouses that should be $3-4 million turn out to be $10 million. Indoor rooms that are $2 million or $10 million. And they overspend. And I know several of these people that have gotten caught up in this, and they're my friends. And like they were, thought they were doing the right thing because it's, hey, what sounds great is when you say something like this. We're building the most highly technical, advanced environmental control system in the whole cannabis industry. I'm going to be able to control my environment and the microcosm. I can control every square inch, and I've got the data that's going to be able to back it up. And dude, that sounds great, right? Well, it's also like cost you like millions and millions of dollars to do it. And you may end up, growing slightly better or more weed over it. But the ROI on spending $12 million on a greenhouse that should cost $1 million, it's just, it's not there. It's not going to be there. And that's how those things collapse. They're not built on business. They're built on investment. And now they've got all this operational cost because it takes two people $100,000 a year to run their software that gets all this great data that they have to pay another whole accounting firm to read it.
Right.
Right. Well,
Do you have, having gone through all these examples with your friends and people, what, cautionary advice could you give to?
Man, the big thing is don't really believe this investment business plan. I've got an investor, I'm an investor. Don't think that the old way of doing it, the way that you probably know, is the best way. The way that's mostly used is the best way. And now things have changed. And I believe that the investors want to be involved in cannabis right now. It is a essential business, and the opportunity, the advantage is on our side. And it is an investment where it's a good, reasonable return, based on profit margin and standard accounting practices. That's a good investment. Right. Like some of the investments I hear about, the return rates are just so high. The expectations are just so high. It's just, they fall apart. And the best advice is to say, look, if you're going to have an investor, they should be an investor, and you should think about it like you're borrowing money. Right. And otherwise you have a partner. And if you're going to get a partner, you need to bring in someone who has something other than just money. If they're just a capital partner and they don't have operational stake in the business, man, there's just so many details there over who gets paid, who does what, and there's operational agreements. They can define all that stuff. But as soon as you have a silent partner that has invested all of the capital, things often go sour. Right. The paperwork's not done appropriately. The investor becomes upset that, the cannabis isn't performing appropriately. And, they're hearing all this other ideas, and they see CannaCribs and got all these ideas on how they should improve their scene. And it just often falls apart. Right. So beware of your investor is absolutely the best advice. And man, form some solid partnerships. If you're interested in growing world-class weed, well, you know what you're going to need is you need a world-class extractor too, because all of the weed that you grow, you're not going to be able to produce into world-class weed. So go find an extractor that you can partner with. Hey, if you're an extractor and you want to make world-class weed, go find a grower and go partner with those people. And instead of bringing this outside investment, so much of it can be done with inside the community and probably with people that But, it just takes you got to get rid of the ego and solely think about the business and think about the business that you can build together, as opposed to this get rich quick scheme that often comes through with this investor type platform. And I hope I'm not insulting any investors out there. And I mean, I'm one myself, and I have other friends that are investors, and I think they'd understand what I'm saying here is you have to be savvy. You have to be savvy on the investment, and you have to be savvy
on both sides.
And hey, let's take that on the other side. Just last week, a friend of mine called me up and he was like, hey man, I'm thinking about putting money into this cannabis operation. He threw out some rate of return. It seemed like a normal rate of return, a little bit better than bank money. But I looked it all up for them. And I looked at their PLs, their BLs. I looked at the performa. I looked at the location. I checked them out with their state. And these guys were totally full of shit. And they just built this performa to fool the unsavvy investor. And hey, man, my friend, he's a savvy investor in the tech industry, but he doesn't know anything about cannabis. Right. And, we just went and looked at the guy's proposed costs for growing a certain amount, a large amount of weed. and realized like, oh, he's only spending $40,000 a year growing weed. Like, there's no way he can grow 4,000 pounds. You know, so like, also,
it goes on both sides, right?
It goes on both sides,
it's
man.
a
Like,
booming industry right now, and I think with any booming industry, it attracts so many apples, and some of them will be bad apples, right? So being cautious, savvy, and as you said, building a world-class community and network of people that you can rely on, like your buddy calling you, whether it's an investor investing into a cannabis corporation or a grower calling you and saying, hey, like, should I take this money? I think that's so vital to have people that you trust, not part of the deal. It does not have skin in the game, that can, help mentor you.
It's true. And, I actually started a consulting group this year, kind of based on that exact principle, is that, I have so many resources in the cannabis industry and can usually like know or figure out the problem. Someone's already had it in just a matter of moments.
Yeah.
And we developed this, it's called Greener Consulting Group. We developed this consulting group, and, with the thought of like, oh, we're going to be able to like help growers or extractors or owners, like, solve some of their cultivation problems. And what we immediately started getting calls for was from investors, from state and local governments, because they need this information too, from banks. They don't know how to bank with cannabis people, but want to.
Interesting.
And, I actually have the connections of one of the guys. He works for us. He's one of our lead consultants at Greener Group. And that's exactly what he does. He helps banks integrate into accepting cannabis clients as clients, cannabis growers as clients. So there's this interaction that can happen now that hasn't happened in the past. Where you can ask experts, where you can, talk to people that actually know the cannabis industry, and not just your great accountant who's going to be leery because he doesn't know the cannabis industry or thinks it's just a widget, because it's completely not a widget. But yeah, there's my little rant, man. You got me talking today. I thought it was supposed to be an interview for you, man.
Well, here's the cool thing. I want to invite you onto the CannaCribs podcast, and
I want to come, dude. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let's schedule it up, and anytime, man. And I absolutely am going to promote your podcast. I'm stoked that we can be working within the same field and not have to feel that there's a competitive nature going on.
Yeah, I built Growers Network and CannaCribs on collaboration over competition, right? When it comes to content, whether it's, the Growing Exposed YouTube channel or, your podcast, fans around the world, they can listen to our podcast back to back. They can watch our YouTube videos back to back. So it's all about collaboration. And I want to say thank you again for, opening up your show for me today to join and share a little bit about what we're doing and being part of that. I believe you said 75% of the industry of being welcoming and accepting of newcomers like myself.
You're no newcomer now, man. That's for sure. Hey, Nick, I really want to thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate talking to you about all the stuff you've done, and it's been a great conversation. We'll have to have you back on again.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you. And for everyone on your team, keep working hard. I know it's a really funky time right now, and it kind of sucks that we can't go to trade shows and see each other and break bread over dinner afterwards. But I'm looking forward to those days again. And in the meantime, let's podcast it up and, YouTube it up.
Sounds good, man. And if you listen to this episode and enjoyed it and would like to hear others, please download The Real Dirt at The Real Dirt Podcast on iTunes, and absolutely subscribe. That's the only way we get to grow. If you're paranoid or you just want to listen to it on my website, you can do that too. You can go to therealdirt.com and just stream it right there. But love you guys. Thanks for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you. I always appreciate your comments on Facebook and Instagram. I feel like my growing network of friends it just expands every day. Just know I'm a real person, and you can always reach me. And this has been The Real Dirt.